Welcome to this session of how to solve the biggest problems with Salesforce training. In this session, you're going to learn how to create and deliver a proven Salesforce training model that will delight your end users and impress your executive team. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Giller. I am a certified Salesforce Sales Cloud consultant. I'm also one of the co-leaders of the New York Salesforce user group. I am a blogger and an author. I've written the Getting Started in Salesforce series of ebooks available on the Amazon Kindle. I used to be over at GE Capital Americas, and even though my official job title was marketing manager, my unofficial title was Salesforce Guru. I'm also an attorney, and I actually was running my own law practice on the Salesforce Sales Cloud for a little over 4 years. And prior to that, I was actually at NBC Universal, where I managed some very large-scale enterprise-wide projects. About 3 years ago, I opened up Brainy, and at Brainy, we help companies with Salesforce training. We also do brand new Salesforce implementations. Sometimes we come into organizations that are already using Salesforce to do some audit and some configuration to further enhance the existing Salesforce organization. And sometimes we actually develop some custom apps to meet a particular very unique business need that a particular organization has. So let's cut into the material that we need to cover here. And talking about Salesforce training, I'm going to introduce you to Max Cooper. Max is a sales manager at Acme Health Corp, and he uses Salesforce in order to track his prospects and customers. And the Salesforce implementation at Acme looks something like this. They've got a little over 500 Salesforce reps. They are on the Enterprise edition of Salesforce. And if you multiply the licensing fees by the number of users, they've invested quite a bit of money on the Salesforce platform. As far as the implementation of Salesforce, the rollout history, they've already moved over all of the older historic data into Salesforce. Salesforce went live about a year ago. And at the point when they went live, they actually did some initial rollout training for end users at the time of the initial implementation. Now, if you ask some of the senior management at Acme, they're going to tell you some of their pain points. And this includes having no visibility into the current pipeline. In order to generate pipeline reports, that's being done in Excel. So when they ask their sales team to put together some pipeline reports, everyone's putting it together in Excel and then emailing attachments to each other, consolidating them, and sometimes that can take not only hours, but days and sometimes weeks. When looking in Salesforce, we often find that we have some half-baked, inaccurate, and duplicate records. Trying to create a customer list. So something as easy as, oh, we have an event coming up and we'd like to invite all of our customers to this upcoming list, or end of year, and we'd like to send out an email just wishing season's greetings to all of our customers, everyone in our database. Where do we do that? How do we do that? And it becomes a complete nightmare because there is no one real database. Even though all of this work has been done in Salesforce, many people are going to say, well, I have a lot of contacts in Outlook, I have some in Excel, I have some in Post-it notes, and by the way, I've got a couple of drawers filled with business cards. We have no insight onto the team's calling efforts. So aside from all of the pain that we're experiencing as it relates to putting together the pipeline, just getting some insight as a sales manager to get some insight as to what is my team doing this week? Who are they meeting with? Who are they calling? We have no insight into any of that. So in the end, the sales managers are essentially left with no data. Now, if we talk to the reps will express their own pain points that are quite different from the pain points expressed by the managers. Asking the reps, they're going to say, well, we never got proper training. And when we ask them how come they're not using Salesforce, they're going to say, I don't have time to use Salesforce. I'm not getting paid to use Salesforce. I'm getting paid to close deals. So I need to work with customers. You want someone to put stuff into Salesforce? Well, why don't you hire someone that works for me, that they can log all of the calls, all the meetings, and all of the proposals that I'm sending out to customers? They can do that in Salesforce while I am busy meeting with customers. Very often, they will also say Salesforce is just too confusing. My favorite, this last one here, is Salesforce isn't as flexible as, and then fill in the blank. And sometimes when we fill in the blank, they're going to say Salesforce is simply not as flexible as Outlook, or it's not as flexible as Excel or Google Sheets. Now, when it comes to all this, I would flip it right back to the reps and start asking them some questions. For example, how often do you as a rep find yourself looking for a phone number or looking for an email address, or when you are ready to reach out to a particular customer and you've been interacting with a couple of different individuals at that account? How do you know who the decision maker is at that account? Let alone, how do you go about finding your notes from your prior meetings with those customers? Or how do the reps keep track and remember their own to-do list items? So while everyone might acknowledge this pain, the sales reps and the managers will acknowledge the pain. The question then becomes, well, how do we quantify it? A sales manager is very often going to say, well, I can't really get a budget for training or for addressing this issue because I can't even quantify it. These are all soft issues. Well, I turn back to any of these organizations and ask the following questions. How much time is being wasted searching for customer information? How much time is being wasted by the organization consolidating all kinds of notes and all kinds of spreadsheets on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? Now, how many deals are actually slipping through the cracks because we're just not on top of it? I recently met with a law firm, and they were exploring leveraging Salesforce, and I was explaining to them some of the features and functionality of Salesforce. And then they started asking me some of the pricing, and as I'm talking about the licensing fees and the fees associated with professional services to roll out Salesforce, the attorney that I was working with turned to me, and a light bulb went off all of a sudden. And he turned to me and he said, you know what? We don't need to talk about the price. You know why? Because all it takes is one case, one prospect that would otherwise be slipping through the cracks. And today we have lots that are slipping through the cracks. So all it takes is one prospect to not slip through the cracks. And we are successful with that one prospect. It could easily bring in millions of dollars to the business. Now, how often do we find that there are frustrated employees who are trying to do their job, who are trying to be productive, they're trying to be efficient, they're trying to do everything that is expected of them, but they end up leaving to go work somewhere else that they perceive to be more efficient? Let alone, how much money has already been invested with the company in Salesforce licensing, in purchasing apps, in developing all kinds of integrations, and ongoing support. So when we start to think about quantifying the pain, the dollars are astounding. So even though everyone might agree with all of the things that I just highlighted, what on earth can Max do in his position? Well, I'll tell you with the strategy that I'm proposing, within 2 to 3 months, Max can see a dramatic increase in Salesforce adoption, accurate pipeline data captured natively in Salesforce, clean prospect and customer data, and visibility into his team's efforts and touches with customers. And believe it or not, I'm suggesting accomplishing all of this without purchasing another shiny app. So from the reps' perspectives, what can they expect to experience within the next 2 to 3 months? Well, they could experience a more streamlined and efficient workflow, visibility into customer data on all devices, clarity on those records that require immediate attention, complete elimination of Excel for all of the cleanup that is currently going on in order to create pipeline and activity reports. And lastly, love and appreciation for the Salesforce platform. Well, how on earth can Max accomplish this transformation? Max is going to follow a 3-step strategy that is proven, it's simple, it's inexpensive, and it is sustainable. If you're not taking notes yet, now might be a good time. Step 1, we're going to prepare. Who is going to be doing this? Well, you decide within your organization. It could be the Salesforce admin, it could be a team, the CRM team. Whoever is going to be ultimately responsible for delivering training needs to do the following. First, understand the current business processes, the nuances, and the priorities that exist within the organization. And this cuts across all departments, all divisions, and all business units that are using Salesforce. Next, identify the key performance indicators that are important to the organization. So for example, quantify how many customer touches are expected to happen each month. Once those 2 things take place, then we're talking about Salesforce. Now the person responsible for doing the Salesforce training needs to become familiar with the existing Salesforce customizations, integrations, third-party apps, and existing pain points. Once all of that has been done, we're going to deploy. And my recommendation is to deploy a mandatory core CRM training curriculum for all users. Based on my experience, best practices that I recommend include the following. We do 1-hour training sessions via the web. The truth is, you can go to 2 hours if you wish, but trying to get 2 hours on the calendar of productive sales reps is most likely going to take a miracle, which is why I'm recommending 1 hour. Do it through the web, through a tool like GoToMeeting or WebEx. Next, schedule these as weekly training sessions. When I say weekly, I don't necessarily mean once a week. I'm suggesting doing something like a Monday-Wednesday routine or a Tuesday-Thursday routine until we get each week, Monday and Wednesday, or each week, Tuesday and Thursday, until we get through all of the material. And lastly, all of the sessions should be recorded. So what type of curriculum are we even talking about? Well, what you're looking at right now is the typical standard curriculum that I personally leverage when I'm doing a Salesforce training curriculum for any of my clients. And as you can see here, we're talking about native Salesforce functionality with the exception of the last item where we're talking about any additional apps, any custom integrations, any additional work that might have been done that's outside of the norm of the typical Salesforce implementation. Step 3. In step 3, we're going to maintain. And this is done through bi-weekly. When I say bi-weekly, I mean every other week, ongoing bi-weekly lunch and learn sessions in order to address new issues, new concerns, new frustrations that come up within the organization. So wouldn't it be better to bring people together once every 2 weeks and give them a forum that if they're struggling with something, if there's some area of frustration, some area of pain, to bring it up in this forum versus letting it simmer and letting them get angrier, more frustrated, and simply stop using Salesforce and perhaps spew poison about the Salesforce implementation throughout the organization. Next, during these lunch and learn sessions, we're going to be sharing ideas in order to improve the existing configuration. So believe it or not, very often, the people who initially are most reluctant to use Salesforce are very often the sources for fantastic ideas to improve the existing configuration for everyone in the company. And lastly, sharing new best practices. What kind of new best practices am I talking about? Well, If you're a Salesforce admin within your organization, chances are, and if you aren't doing it yet, now might be a good time to start. Chances are that you've been reading different blogs associated with Salesforce, keeping up to date with postings that are going on in the Salesforce success community, catching up on YouTube videos associated with Salesforce, seeing what's going on at local user group meetings. And from all of those interactions, from all of those communications, those are all amazing sources of fantastic best practices. Now, outside of the external best practices, very often you will find internal within your own organization some best practices that are absolutely worth sharing internally within your own company. Letting everyone know how spectacular it was for Susan to close a couple of deals that she otherwise wouldn't have closed because she had the notification, the transparency, the information that Salesforce provided. Those are fantastic best practices to be sharing internally. Now, I mentioned earlier about recording the sessions, and you might be wondering why am I talking about recording all of the sessions, and even how on earth is that done? Well, let's tackle the tactical piece first. How on earth is that done? If you're using a tool like GoToMeeting or WebEx, those types of tools have natively within them the capability to record the sessions. As soon as the session is done, I personally use GoToMeeting and I love it. By recording the session, as soon as the session is done, GoToMeeting will convert the entire recording, meaning anything that was shared on the screen as well as the audio. It will capture it and save it on my computer as an MP4 file that I can then post internally within the organization. So by recording all of these sessions, first thing that we do is we eliminate excuses. Oh, I couldn't attend. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I had a fire drill. Next, it will help new hires. Anyone that's hired after the training session takes place now has recorded a portfolio, a library of recorded sessions that they can access at any point in time. And especially within larger organizations, very often, there are internal promotions. Someone who previously was an intern now gets promoted to be a sales rep. A sales rep gets promoted to be a sales manager. Marketing manager gets marketing rep gets promoted to be a marketing manager. Well, we have the recordings available because some of the functionality that even if they attended and they paid attention and they absorbed all of the information that was being shared previously, it now applies to them in a slightly different way in their new role. Having those recordings available will be incredibly helpful for those employees. And since they were done previously, we're now not paying an extra nickel in order to leverage those resources. And lastly, it allows users to rewatch previously attended sessions. Very often, especially for new users, the content that's being shared is a little bit overwhelming. Maybe only 60 or 70% is actually absorbed the first time that they see it and the first time they participate. Having the recording allows them to go back in and rewatch just those sections that they need a refresher on. Optional. There are a couple of different optional, let's think of them as toppings on your ice cream that you can add on to your training curriculum in order to really take it over the top. And I'll tell you that I came up with this from a suggestion that came from one of my clients. I had a client that actually turned to me after I did all the training, turned to me and said, "Can you give my employees a homework assignment?" And I initially rolled my eyes and cringed, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Can you give my employees a homework assignment because I want to make sure that they actually paid attention, that they know what to do, and they know how to use Salesforce in the way that you described." So I started putting together this homework assignment. I'll call it a hands-on exercise. And as I was putting it together, I realized how brilliant it was. So now I'm sharing it with you as a recommended optional enhancement that you can include in your own training curriculum. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about providing end users with a step-by-step hands-on exercise or multiple exercises in order to make sure that they truly know how to do all of the things, leverage all of the features and all of the functionality that they truly need in their day-to-day jobs. So for example, telling them that they need to find, create, edit, reassign certain records. What records? Well, it depends on who the audience is. It might be leads, it might be contacts, it might be accounts, it might be opportunities, quotes, campaigns, cases, all depends on the role that they have. Having the users create tasks and assigning some of those tasks to themselves and assigning some of those tasks to others. Having them update the records via a mobile device, including chatter posts. So one of the things that I like to do is, as I have indicated on this slide, I have end users find a record, a task that was assigned to them by a colleague, and not only update the task to indicate that it was done, but also to include a chatter post using the camera that's built into the smartphone by taking a selfie of themselves, maybe even with a funny facial expression, and tagging their colleague when posting it, which is now teaching them not only how to use Salesforce on a mobile device, but also showing them, giving them a hands-on experience of leveraging the camera and attaching a file directly to Chatter and tagging a colleague on it. And of course, you can have all users creating list views, reports, and dashboards. So just to review, we have a 3-step approach to put together a Salesforce training plan. First, we prepare. Second, we deploy. We actually roll out a training curriculum. And third, we maintain through lunch and learn sessions. If you want to add some optional kick butt enhancements, you record all of the sessions and you measure competency through micro exercises. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you so much and have a great day.